When Congress returns from its July 4 recess, all eyes will be on the House as it grapples with its own version of an immigration bill. One of the key architects of the Senate bill, John McCain, laid out the stakes for his party if the House blocks reform.
I really hesitate to tell Speaker Boehner exactly how he should do this, but I think Republicans realize the implications of the future of the Republican Party in America if we don't get this issue behind us.
Meanwhile, his fellow Gang of Eight member Chuck Schumer predicted that the House's piecemeal approach was unworkable and would lead to the House biting the bullet and passing the Senate legislation by the end of the year.
Within several months, Speaker Boehner will find two choices: no bill or let a bill pass with a majority of Democratic votes and some Chamber of Commerce type Republicans, and he'll find that the better choice. We'll pass the Senate bill by the end of this year, even though most House members don't think so.
Now, both men were deferential to the wishes of the one man who could decide the fate of immigration reform, House Speaker John Boehner, who said that on immigration he will insist on enforcing the Hastert rule, which, by the way, he has thrice jettisoned on the fiscal cliff, Sandy Relief, and the Violence Against Women Act. But what does Boehner himself want? He's not saying.
You know, me taking a position one way or another somewhere, it's just going to slow the process down and make it more difficult. I've got a difficult enough job as it is. I don't need to make it harder.
And his job is complicated by the fact that the party's long-term interests seem to be in conflict with the more immediate electoral needs of House Republican members, 84% of whom represent districts with electorates that are 20% or less Hispanic. Texas Representative Kenny Merchant summed up his opposition, telling the AP, if you give the legal right to vote to 10 Hispanics in my district, 7 to 8 of them are going to vote Democrat. Or as one House Republican aide told Ezra Klein, our guys actually do primary over immigration. And joining the panel now is a senior fellow at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities and MSNBC contributor Jared Bernstein, CNBC Chief Washington Correspondent John Harwood. And joining us from Chicago is Democratic Congressman from Illinois, Luis Gutierrez. And Congressman Gutierrez, I will start with you because a lot of people believe that the incentives for John Boehner to put this bill on the floor are few because if he does it, he risks actually losing his speakership. In your reading, is John Boehner willing to risk his speakership to pass immigration reform?
I think in the end, the speaker understands something very, very different that we're living, that a majority, that is more than 218 members of the House of Representatives are ready to vote for comprehensive immigration reform, that dozens of members of his Republican caucus want to vote, and they want to vote, many of them, because it's the right thing to do, others because it's politically expedient for them to do it. I really don't care how they come to the table. The fact is that a majority, look, Boehner is not the kind of, how would I say it, ideological guy, right? He sits down. He voted against Sensenbrenner, that mean legislation that criminalized all immigrants. And he's not a very ideological person when it comes to pushing. He wants to try to reach consensus. I believe that about him. And he's in a quandary right now with a majority of his party that doesn't want him to allow a vote for comprehensive immigration reform. But look, to me, there's going to be a vote eventually on comprehensive immigration reform in the House because of one reason is that, and it's kind of the depth and the breadth. So far, what Chairman Goodlatte has proposed is the same failed, discredited policies of the past, right? It's even worse than self-deportation. Now it's report to deport if you're an ag worker, and they've criminalized every one of the 11 million people. And I think when they understand the magnitude of the demand and the depth of this demand, that they continue to call 11 million people criminals, and children in our community see their parents, and people at church see people who are sitting in the pews, and teachers see their students. They're going to understand that our community really embraces this in a way that is going to be very, very unforgiving to them. So if they want to be a party of localities and provinces and maybe some states, then don't allow a vote. They will never be a national party ever again.
But, you know, I want to come back out to the panel. And, Matt, I mean, The point that Congressman Gutierrez just made, isn't that really Boehner's problem? That he's not this hardcore ideological guy? I want to read really quickly something Eugene Robinson wrote in the Washington Post. He said, if the past is any guide, Boehner's pledge to follow the wishes of a majority of the House of Representatives is as good as gold until he breaks it. This time, however, the issue is so fraught that he likely would face a rebellion. Shortly after the House passed the Senate immigration bill, irate Tea Party conservatives could depose Boehner from his post. Isn't the problem that he's not trusted by the core of the Republican base because they think he will eventually fold because he's not ideological?
That is one problem. And another problem he faces, or that people who want to see a bill pass face, is that there's not an equivalent of the fiscal cliff here or of the expiration of the debt ceiling. There isn't some crisis day at which point something has to happen. If Boehner can find a way to sort of keep punting, I mean, you saw he was there on camera and he said he wasn't going to take a position on the bill. And so the longer he can sort of stall, the better for him. And, you know, he could potentially stall for quite a long time.
And John, I mean, the only way that it seems that John Boehner could get this done would be to do what he's done before. Go back to the Democratic Party, go back to Nancy Pelosi, essentially the real Speaker of the House, and say, listen, you get me the votes and I'll bring you 20 people. If he does that on this issue that is so fraught for Republicans in the base, can he possibly survive? And do you think he'll try it?
I think it would be difficult for him if he took a bill to the floor that was only going to get 20 Republican votes, but I don't think that's what he'll do. I think there will be something. It's been slowed down by the mess over the Farm Bill and the discord that showed within the caucus. But I think something will move in the House. They will get to conference in the Senate. And ultimately, the Republicans are going to have a decision to make as to whether they move forward with a path to legalization or not. I think in the end, because there is a cliff of presidential elections every 4 years, they don't want to lose them indefinitely. I think in the end, they will get a bill. Democrats will have to make some sort of concession. They may have to go back and take the Cornyn Amendment or something like that, some sort of enforcement trigger. But I do think that John Boehner wants to get something done in this area, and I think there are enough Republicans with him that he will ultimately take the risk.
But Jared, you're a finance guy. I mean, they've tried. They have increased the cost of the Senate bill by adding 22,000 Border Patrol agents. Sure. They've made arguments on the fact that it saves the country money, which is supposedly what Republicans care about. Does there seem to be anything that could be offered to the Republican Party that would make them go for it?
The only thing that could be offered are matters like the border control, which costs. Basically, the only way you get this over the Republican goal line is by making the bill far harsher than it already is. I'd be interested in the congressman's response to this, but it seems to me that anything that comes out of the House of Representatives is going to make the path to citizenship, as far as the Senate looks, like a walk in the garden.
Maybe 26 years instead of 30.
Exactly. Congressman, is that what you see happening? Something so draconian that it couldn't even pass with Democrats?
But let me just say, it's already draconian, right? I mean, they're cut out of the ACA. We've confiscated billions of dollars they've already contributed in Social Security, right? They work for 10 years and can't get a means-tested program. And then they use the surplus that they create, $175 billion in the first 10 years, to build a border and a fence so that our neighbors can't come and visit us. So look, we're going to find a way. I do believe that the way is to conference. You have a small group of Republicans that now are saying that a conference equals amnesty. I think a conference reaches a solution. And so we need to work. We still have a bipartisan group, because no matter what, you need a bipartisan group and a bipartisan proposal in the House of Representatives so that we can bring the Paul Ryans and those who want to find a solution. That helps facilitate the process for John Boehner.
Okay, and we have to thank, I'm sorry, we're out of time. We're going to have to thank Congressman Luis Gutierrez. But when we come back, Joan Walsh is going to run the panel after when we come after.